It found that there was credible evidence of Russian interference in our elections, but the government of Boris Johnson refused to actually investigate what the kind of nature of that interference was.
How worried should we be about Russian interference in elections in this country? In the last few moments, the European Court of Human Rights has ruled that the UK government is not failing in its duty to investigate Russian interference, but it did hold that there were merits in the case and that the court must urgently look more closely at how to legislate on election interference. Caroline Lucas is the former Green Party leader. She brought the case alongside Ben Bradshaw and Alan Smith, and she joins us now. Good morning.
Good morning.
For those who have not been following this case as closely as you will have been, can you outline the background for us about the ruling today?
Yes, of course. So this was a case that was originally brought 5 years ago. So this was the Boris Johnson government that, you might remember, first of all, sat on the so-called Russia report. This was a report from the Intelligence and Security Committee that found, as it appeared when it was finally published, it found that there was credible evidence of Russian interference in our elections. But the government of Boris Johnson refused to actually investigate what the kind of nature of that interference was. And so the case that we brought was essentially saying that our right to free and fair elections under Article 3 of the European Convention were being breached by that government's failure to show any curiosity at all as to what exactly the nature was of this interference by the Russian state in our elections. It was a case that was supported by Lord Peter Ricketts, a former National Security Advisor to the UK government, who said we absolutely do need to have an inquiry and that we can't properly protect the UK until we do.
And the court in its ruling has said that there were, quote, undoubtedly shortcomings in the UK's initial response to the reports of Russian election interference, but suggested there had been two thorough and independent investigations, and the government has since taken a number of legislative and operational measures to counter disinformation. Are you satisfied now that we can have elections that are free of interference to the extent that it allows people to cast their ballot and get the result that they voted for?
Well, unfortunately, I don't think that we can say that with confidence. Just to explain, there were 3 steps to our case, as you kind of suggest, and 2 of those steps the court did uphold. So they agreed that the right to free and fair elections is an issue that is engaged by foreign interference. In other words, they accept that governments should have a duty to investigate when there are cases of hostile interference. Where they didn't uphold our case was on our case that the government of the time hadn't done enough to do that investigation. They have said, actually drawing on quite a lot of work that's been done since the Tory government, so more recently by this government and by efforts since we brought the case, they are now saying that enough has been done to mean that we don't need to investigate further, that we are safe. I would argue really strongly that the fact, for example, that a foreign individual like, say, Elon Musk could still spend $100 million on a UK election. There's nothing to stop him under current legislation from doing that. He can simply funnel it through a UK entity. Means that our electoral system is not robust. It is not safe from interference from foreign actors, and that we do therefore need to take this very seriously going forward as well.
Do you have any evidence of interference from Russia in UK elections that have happened in the last couple of years?
I don't have that information. I think the question is that does anyone have that data? And the problem that we have come across in the case was precisely that governments were showing an extraordinary lack of curiosity in terms of finding out what was going on. So if the Russia report itself said there was credible evidence of interference, the case that we have been making is that governments need to be more curious to find out exactly what the nature of that interference is. Now, I cannot believe that it would be the case that suddenly Russia has stopped being interested in interfering in happening in other electoral systems. And we know this has ramifications for European countries across the board, not just for the UK.
Can I ask you, finally, you mentioned there that Elon Musk would be able to funnel money into UK political parties in a perfectly legal way under the current rules of the system. Would the Green Party rule out accepting any donations from any national who is not based in the UK and declared in a way that you think is acceptable? Would you go further than what the rules currently allow?
We would go a lot further than the rules currently allow, because we just think it is totally wrong that so much money can come in from people who are not based in the UK, who are not taxpayers, who do not have a vested interest.
So you don't accept any donations from people who are not UK-based taxpayers at the moment. As the Green Party, you don't do that?
Not as far as I'm aware.
OK, and you would rule that out for the future? That's never something that you would do?
We want to see donations capped, as a first of all. We want to see state funding for political parties, because we just think that the amount of money that's coming into our electoral system totally distorts the kind of contest that you then have in the UK. So we want to see the whole system overhauled, and that would include state funding for political parties, precisely so no matter where you're based, the fact that you've got huge amounts of money doesn't mean that you can influence the outcome of elections.
Caroline Lucas, the former Green Party leader, thanks very much for being on the programme.
Thank you.
You know how I love it.